photo is right there on my desk. Ethan, 17 years old, Lancaster Catholic High School baseball uniform, 1998. He's squinting into the sun, and he's grinning the way boys grin when they don't know anything bad has ever happened or is coming. I put it face down once. Couldn't do it. Put it back up. I've been sitting here since before Barbara came downstairs. That happens a lot now. I wake at 5:30. The Ambien runs out before morning always does. And I come in here and I sit with the coffee going cold in the cup, and I look at that photo until the light outside the window changes from black to gray. That's what I do. That's most of what I do. I was an oncologist for 30 years, Lancaster General, then Penn Medicine. I specialized in pain management for cancer patients, opioid protocols, palliative care, the whole machinery of making dying more bearable. The hospital gave me a plaque in 2004, Excellence in Compassionate Care. It's on the shelf behind me right now, turned toward the wall. I taught seminars on opioid stewardship. I stood at podiums and told rooms full of physicians, start low, go slow. Never prescribe to family. Know your patient's history. Watch for the signs. I said those words hundreds of times. I believed them. I just didn't apply them when it mattered. Ethan's accident was March of 2003. He was 22. Motorcycle. Lancaster County, Route 30, wet road, a car that drifted into his lane. He didn't die. I need to say that separately because some part of me needs you to understand there was a before. There was a version of this where Ethan lived and got better, and none of what followed had to happen. Fracture of the tibia and fibula, damage to the right knee, real pain, significant pain. I was in the emergency room at Lancaster General that night as his father and also, God help me, as the senior opioid specialist on staff. The ER attending wanted to start him on Percocet, standard protocol. 2 weeks, taper off, follow up with the orthopedist. I overrode it. I said, I know this medication. I know how it works. I can manage my own son's pain better than a general protocol can. I'll write the prescription myself. I prescribed Duragesic patches, 25 micrograms per hour, transdermal, changed every 72 hours, continuous release. I chose fentanyl over oxycodone because I knew fentanyl. I had prescribed it to dying people for years, and they thanked me for it. I chose it for Ethan the way a carpenter chooses his best chisel for his own furniture, because I trusted it. That was the first mistake. The only mistake, really. Every other mistake just grew out of that one. You have to understand what fentanyl is before you understand what I did to my son. Fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine, not 10 times, 100. A patch delivers 25 micrograms every hour, around the clock, into the bloodstream through the skin. No peak, no valley, smooth and constant and invisible. I used to explain this to medical students. I'd write it on the board. The dose makes the poison. Paracelsus, day one of pharmacology. I made them repeat it. I quizzed them on it. The dose makes the poison. The dose makes the poison. The dose makes the poison. And then I wrote a prescription for my own son and forgot everything I knew. That's the thing about knowledge when love gets in the way of it. Knowledge doesn't disappear. It just gets filed somewhere out of reach. You know the antidote. You choose not to think about the poison. Because what you're doing right now is taking care of your child. And you've been a physician for 30 years, and you know how to take care of people. That's what I told myself. For 18 months, I told myself that. I renewed Ethan's prescription 4 times, 18 months of Duragesic. When the fracture healed, I told myself the pain was still real. Because it was, tolerance changes everything, and once you've been on continuous release fentanyl, the pain of not having it is as real as any fracture. I knew this. I knew this in the clinical, documented, peer-reviewed way. Barbara started asking questions in late 2004. She's a librarian. Research is in her blood. She came to me with printouts, articles. She said, "Jerry, it says here that long-term fentanyl in patients without terminal diagnosis leads to opioid use disorder in significant percentages. It says," I said, "Barbara, I'm the physician in this house." She didn't speak to me about it again for 3 months. She should have never stopped. I stopped renewing the prescription in February of 2005. Audits were starting, scrutiny on high-dose opioids for non-terminal patients. I had enough self-preservation instinct to stop before someone noticed. I told myself Ethan was ready to taper. He wasn't ready. Within 3 weeks, he'd found another doctor in Chester County, then one in Dauphin County. Pennsylvania didn't have a unified prescription monitoring database until 2016. Ethan could walk into a new office, describe back pain with a limp that was real enough, and walk out with a script. Doctor after doctor. I built the hunger. The system fed it. I told myself the other doctors were the problem now. I washed my hands of it the way I used to wash my hands before surgery, deliberately, thoroughly, until they felt clean. They were never clean. The moment I actually knew, the moment I stopped being able to lie to myself, was January of 2010. Saturday morning, I was in my study reviewing a conference paper, and I heard a sound from the downstairs bathroom. Not a loud sound, a kind of heavy, soft sound. The sound a person makes when they lose consciousness. I found Ethan on the tile floor. He was breathing, shallow, slow, a breath every 8 seconds, maybe 10. He had a Duragesic 100 microgram patch on his neck, maximum absorption, maximum blood concentration. He'd been escalating for years. This was his maintenance dose. I am a physician. I am a physician trained in opioid overdose and reversal. I have naloxone in my black bag, the same bag I've carried since 1987. I stood in that doorway for what I later calculated was at least 45 seconds, not moving. Then I called 911. A stranger's voice told me to check his airway. A stranger told me to roll him on his side. A stranger walked me through the steps I had taught medical students, steps I could recite in my sleep, steps I had drilled for 30 years. Ethan survived. The paramedics gave him naloxone in the ambulance, the same naloxone that was sitting in my bag 40 feet away. He was discharged the next afternoon. In the hospital room, when he came fully back to himself, he looked at me from the bed and said, "Dad, don't do that face." I said, "What face?" He said, "The one where you're already figuring out whose fault it is." I think about that sometimes, about what he saw in me, about whether he knew, the way children always know, that I was already constructing the case for my own defense. He died March 11, 2014. He was 32 years old. By the last 2 years, the licensed doctors had stopped prescribing. Pennsylvania's prescription drug monitoring program wasn't mandatory yet, but the climate had changed. Ethan's doctor shopping was flagged. He switched to illicit fentanyl. In 2013 and 2014, carfentanil started appearing in the illicit opioid supply on the East Coast. Carfentanil is 10,000 times more potent than morphine, 100 times more potent than fentanyl itself. It's used to tranquilize elephants. It has no business being in any product marketed to a human being. Ethan couldn't have known what was in what he bought. Nobody buying illicit fentanyl in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 2014 could have known. The medical examiner's report said, acute fentanyl toxicity, suspected carfentanil contamination. I read that report with my physician's training intact, every number, every measurement. I understood exactly what had happened to his brain and his heart and his lungs in the sequence it happened. I have not read a pathology report since. I tried once in 2016 reviewing a case for a colleague. I got 3 lines in and the room went white. I retired from Penn Medicine in 2017. They gave me a reception. People said the things you say, 30 years of compassionate care, legacy of excellence. I stood there in the same suit I wore to Ethan's funeral. I didn't realize it until Barbara pointed it out in the parking lot, quietly, the way she does everything now, and I accepted every handshake and said nothing else. The plaque on the shelf says, Excellence in Compassionate Care. I turned it around in March of 2014. I haven't turned it back. Barbara and I still live in this house, the house where Ethan grew up. She's upstairs right now. I can hear her footsteps. We eat dinner together. We talk about Claire, our daughter, who calls every Sunday. We don't talk about Ethan. We haven't found the right way to start, and I think we both know we never will. I take Ambien to sleep, 10 milligrams prescribed by a cardiologist who treats me for hypertension. He and I have never discussed addiction. I have never told him that I am, of all the things I am, a former opioid prescribing specialist with a particular relationship to the concept of medication dependency. The Ambien is on my desk right now, half a box. I look at it sometimes. I don't know what I'm waiting for when I sit here in the morning. I don't know what I think is going to change. The coffee goes cold and the light changes from black to gray, and Ethan is 17 years old in the photograph, and he is grinning into the sun, and he doesn't know anything yet. He didn't know what I was going to do. I knew, and I did it anyway. The dose makes the poison, day 1. I should have written it on my own wall.